The candle smoke in Westminster Abbey still hung in the chill January air when the rumble of discontent began. King Edward the Confessor, last of the old West Saxon line, lay entombed beneath the marble floor, and at his passing, the delicate balance that had kept England poised between rival powers shattered like thin ice under a mailed boot. With scarcely a pause for mourning, the white Nagemote acclaimed Harold Godwinson, magnate, soldier, and the kingdom's richest earl, as king. His coronation was swift, more practical than grand, for every heartbeat pressed him closer to the storm he knew was gathering across the Channel. Harold felt the weight of the crown like hot iron. Edward had promised him power, but rumors hissed that the childless king had also sworn the throne to William of Normandy. In the chronicles of Christendom, oaths sealed upon holy relics were binding chains. Broken, they became torches that lit the path to war. In Rouen fortress hall, Duke William listened as messengers described Edward's funeral and Harold's crowning. His hawk-sharp features remained still, yet within him flared a furnace fueled by ambition, piety, and a sense of betrayal. Years earlier, Harold had sailed to Normandy and, according to Norman scribes, recognized William as Edward's heir. Now that promise lay in tatters. William summoned his barons, bishops, and shipwrights to devise not mere reprisal, but an enterprise of conquest. Papal envoys, lured by William's argument that he fought to uphold a sacred oath, granted a banner of St. Peter to his enterprise, framing the invasion as a righteous crusade before the age of crusades had truly begun. Summer ripened into August, and every inlet from Honfleur to Dieppe bustled with sawyers, rope makers, and blacksmiths. They built flat-bottomed transports sturdy enough for armored horses, long keel ships to carry archers and foot soldiers, and flagships crowned with the ducal standard, 2 golden lions striding on a scarlet field. Priests moved among the ranks, blessing spears and sprinkling holy water on freshly forged helmets. Norman knights tested stirrups and saddle trees, while Breton light cavalry rehearsed sweeping flanking maneuvers on sun-baked dunes. Across the water stood an England distracted by a second peril. Harold Hardrada of Norway, legendary for conquests from the Mediterranean to the snows of Vinland, allied with Harold's estranged brother, Tostig, and hurled a Viking storm upon the northern shires. Harold Godwinson responded with the speed that once had made him the realm's greatest field commander. In only 4 hard marching days, he led his housecarl elite from London to Stamford Bridge. There, beneath a late September sun, shield rang on shield in a clash that would echo as the last great Viking battle. Hardrada fell, an arrow in his throat, and Tostig died beside him. But fate, fickle and cruel, granted Harold only fleeting triumph. Even as his weary men tended wounds by the river Derwent, news arrived that William's massive armada had at last caught a favorable wind and landed unopposed at Pevensey on the Sussex coast. The Norman Duke wasted no hour. He built a wooden fort at Hastings, deployed mounted patrols to scour the countryside, and offered safe passage to any locals willing to swear fealty. His aim was clear: draw Harold south before the Saxon fyrd, levies summoned from shire to shire, could reassemble in overwhelming numbers. The English king understood the trap, yet had no choice. Each village torched by Norman raiders threatened his legitimacy. So once more, he drove his men on a punishing march, covering nearly 250 miles in a fortnight. Boots squelching through autumn mud, chainmail chafing shoulders already raw from Stamford Bridge. On the night of 13th October, Harold's army took position upon Senlac Ridge, a rise of high ground overlooking the road to London. There they raised the dragon banner of Wessex and the papal banner of Edward, symbols of ancestral right and divine sanction. Before dawn, William's host spilled from their timber palisade, armor glinting under star-stippled sky. Chroniclers place his strength near 7,000, Norman and Breton knights astride chargers, infantry clad in hauberks of interlocked rings, and archers carrying yew bows whose draw power could skewer a man through shield and rib. They advanced to the foot of the ridge, Henry of Yew bearing the relic banner gifted by Rome, a gesture meant to crush English morale by suggesting God marched with Normandy. Yet Harold's line did not waver. Housecarls, veterans of North Sea wars, formed an unbroken wall of overlapping shields trimmed with iron. Behind them stood shire levies armed with spears, axes hastily shaped from orchard tools, and an unyielding pride in the soil beneath their feet. The battle began with the shrill cry of Norman trumpets. Archers stepped forward, loosing volleys that arced toward the ridge like flocks of black geese. Most shafts skipped off angled shields or stuck harmlessly in the turf. The slope robbed the arrows of lethal descent. William signaled his infantry to press upward. They climbed through a hail of stones and javelins, clashing into the Saxon wall but finding no purchase. From vantage above, English axes hacked at exposed shoulders and helms. Men tumbled back down the incline, tripping those behind, sowing confusion amid the close ranks. Seeing his infantry repelled, William unleashed the hammer of feudal warfare. Heavy cavalry, mail-clad chargers strained uphill, nostrils flaring, while lances leveled like a forest laid horizontal. The earth trembled, yet the shield wall held. Shafts splintered, horses reared upon staked palisades hidden in the tall grass, and Norman riders toppled into the morass below, armor rattling like kettle drums. In that first shock, the English roared their triumph, and a rumor slithered through the Norman rear that Duke William lay slain beneath a heap of bodies. Panic rippled. Some Breton cohorts on the left wing broke into full retreat. At that perilous moment, William performed an act that legend gilded in gold leaf. He lifted his helmet, revealing his face to friend and foe alike, and spurred his horse before the wavering lines, voice carrying above the clash. "Look upon me! I live, and by God's grace, I will conquer." Seeing their lord unbroken, knights rallied, wheeling to counter English levies who, drunk on victory, had surged downslope in disorderly pursuit. Norman horse enveloped them, cutting stragglers off from the main shield line. Many brave but unseasoned peasants fell beneath sword and hoof, a warning written in blood that discipline, not passion, would decide Senlac's crest. Battle raged hour upon hour. Sun climbed to its zenith, baking armor until chain-scorched skin. William adjusted tactics, ordering archers to fire high, so shafts dropped almost vertical, seeking seams in helmets and mail. This rain of iron began to bite. Then, employing a stratagem learned in continental wars, he directed a feigned retreat. Knights pretended panic, turning bridle and galloping downhill. Portions of the Saxon line again abandoned position, eager for slaughter. As they descended in jagged clumps, Norman horse spun, encircling them in crescent pincer, while infantry surged to widen breaches, now gaping in the once mighty shield wall. Late in the afternoon, with dust veiling the sun in murky bronze, fate loosed an arrow that would seal England's path. Whether by chance or guided aim, the shaft struck King Harold near the right eye. He slumped beside his personal standard, the fighting man felled amid his finest hour and was enveloped by loyal housecarls who fought to their last breath to protect him. Without the king's steady hand, the remaining Saxons pressed together atop the ridge's summit, forming a desperate ring. Norman knights, sensing victory, advanced in relentless waves, swords flashing. One by one, the dragon banners toppled. As dusk approached, triumphant horns sounded across the hill, now thick with shadow. The ridge of Senlac was no longer English ground. It was the anvil upon which William, soon to be called Conqueror, had forged a new order. Night fell eerie and windless. Fires flickered among the heaps of slain, illuminating faces fixed in silent witness to a shifting epoch. William's priests sang Te Deum in low chant, the Latin syllables swirling with smoke that smelled of pine and iron. Below, the once proud Fyrd lay broken, some limping toward the weald, others sheltering in woods, afraid to return to homes already bracing for Norman rule. On the morrow, William reclaimed his march, taking Dover, Canterbury, then circling north to isolate London by winter. The city, bereft of leadership, opened gates. On Christmas Day, he accepted the English crown within Westminster Abbey, the same sanctuary where Harold had stood 11 months before. As the congregation shouted acclamation in Norman French, frightened guards outside mistook the roar for revolt and set nearby houses ablaze, flames licking the midwinter gloom like a devil's benediction upon the newborn regime. Yet conquest is never a single day's deed. William ordered massive timber keeps, motte and bailey castles, to sprout across the land, projecting his authority in stone and sword. Loyalty was rewarded with fiefs. Resistance met steel. Norman clerics replaced Saxon bishops, French law blended with ancient custom, and the very language of the realm began absorbing Norman phrases that would, over centuries, transform English into a hybrid tongue. The Domesday Book, compiled 2 decades later, served as both ledger and chain, cataloging every hide of land, head of cattle, and fish pond, ensuring taxation that flowed unerringly into Norman coffers. For common folk, the change thundered loudest in places they held most dear. A village once owing service to an Anglo-Saxon thane awoke to discover its fields recharted under a chevalier from Rouen. Hurdle fences gave way to vineyards, timber halls to stone keeps, open field farming to enclosed pastures stocked with Norman sheep. Yet surviving chronicles reveal not universal despair. Some Saxons found avenues within the new hierarchy. Others sought solace in monasteries where illuminated scriptoria still revered Old English saints. Still, an undercurrent of resistance simmered from Exeter to the marshes of Ely, where Hereward the Wake waged desperate guerrilla warfare well beyond 1070. William answered dissent with iron resolve, but he also nurtured a pragmatic policy: intermarriage, church patronage, and the retention of certain shire courts. This amalgam forged a realm paradoxically stronger than the sum of its parts. Out of ashes and arrow shafts arose a kingdom poised to stride into the Crusades, to draft Magna Carta, and eventually to knit an empire spanning hemispheres. The arrow in Harold's eye became a hinge on which the English future swung. Feudal hierarchy, chivalric code, and continental culture flooding an island that once had gazed inward behind its channel moat. Centuries later, inked panels of the Bayeux Tapestry still unfurl this saga. Comet foretelling doom, Harold swearing on hidden relics, ships crossing chalky seas, horses leaping from boat to shore as though birthed from saltwater foam. In colored thread, we see the shield wall, the feigned flight, and the fatal arrow. Scenes as vibrant now as when embroidered by Norman nuns who stitched triumph into myth. But woven beneath is another story, quiet yet profound. Cultures colliding, identities reshaped, and a nation forever wrestling with the question of who may rightfully wield power over its green hills and winding rivers. Thus, the Battle of Hastings did more than decide a throne. It rewrote England's DNA. The echo of hooves on Senlac Ridge resonates in parliamentary debate, in legal parchment, in every English word where French elegance meets Saxon grit. It is a reminder that history's hinge moments are not mere dates, but living currents tugging at the present. Stand upon that sus rise today, and if the wind is right, you may still hear the clang of mail, the whistle of arrows, and the shout of a duke refusing death so that England might be born anew, an island realm forever changed on a single October day.